another show of Don't Get This Twisted. I am Rob, along with my co-host, as always, Tina. How you doing, Tina?
I'm doing good, Rob. How are you doing?
Not too shabby for a day off.
Right. I have to go to work, so it's not my day off. But
well,
we're not doing this on the weekend.
No. But we're gonna eat tomorrow, correct? Isn't that the plan?
Yes.
Yeah. So we'll see each other in person and actually try to weave this crazy podcast and get a little more in sync with what we're supposed to be doing. We've been throwing it together for the last couple months. So
I don't know. You know what? I'm getting a lot of feedback that is as thrown together as it is. The episodes are getting better from what I'm hearing.
I've heard the same. So
yeah.
I guess we should take that as maybe we should just keep throwing it together.
We work best without a plan.
Yeah, without a net. See, we're like one of those circus performers that work without a net.
You don't understand how often I hear that circus music playing in my head with my life. It's kind of a theme.
Me too. Yeah. There's a lot of fucking clowns around me.
Oh, that's horrible. That is horrible.
So we were talking off the air and wondering what we should talk about today. And you brought something up that's around you, actually. And I think it's a very good subject to talk about. Would you like to tell the story and leave the names out of it?
Yes. Yes. I have a friend who was driving down the street and saw a really bad car accident and stopped to see what he could do. Inside the car was, I guess the car had caught on fire and there was people inside the car and he was trying to help them and he couldn't get to them. And two of the girls that were in the car died and they were pregnant. And he tried as he could. I guess he got burnt because of the, trying to get them out. But it happened so fast and he did everything that he could do. And unfortunately, the girls passed. This man could not sleep. It was constantly on his mind. He was having a lot of nightmares for the longest time, couldn't sleep. And we talked about it a lot. Like it was plaguing him, the guilt of him not being able to save these girls that were pregnant and had little souls in their bodies. And we went through this several months of him having these nightmares, basically. Then he started to get over it and he was subpoenaed to have to appear in court, just going through the deposition at this point. And it brought back all of his feelings of guilt. And I don't want to put this in his mouth, but of an inadequacy that he couldn't, no matter what he tried, he could not save those girls. And he really feels like it was his fault that he couldn't save them or didn't save them. Like he didn't do enough. And, we talked about it. And I finally said, I'm like, look, as a mom, which he doesn't really know me as a mom, but I am a mom. And I said, if my daughter was in that situation and somebody came to try to save her, and that was the last bit of kindness that she saw on this earth, I would be so grateful, whether she passed or not, because I couldn't be there to do it. I couldn't be there to console her, but you were there. You were there pushing through, trying to get these girls out. And there shouldn't be any guilt and there shouldn't be any, just these horrible feelings that he's dealing with. And, I guess no matter what I say, we talked about this, no matter what I say, he's still going to have that guilt. He's going to have to walk through that and try to rectify it himself. But I look at him so differently than he looks at himself. Like, what a hero of a father, of a man that would go out of his way for somebody he doesn't even know and put himself in a situation that he put himself in danger to try to save somebody. Like, I don't see the guilt part. All I see is a heroic person that went through an extreme situation and just couldn't fix it. I tried to talk to him about when a person's supposed to meet their maker, it doesn't matter what happens, you're not going to be able to save them. I think doctors struggle with that. I think a lot of people do.
Mhm.
But yeah, it really hurts me to see the survivor's guilt that goes with situations like this. And on top of that, I have a father who was in Vietnam, and the survivor guilt that he has all these years later. We're talking, he came home when I was a couple months old. So we're talking almost 53 years of survivor's guilt from being in Vietnam. Like, when does this end? When do you get rid of it? How do you get rid of it? How do you let yourself off the hook?
I think in general, it probably never goes away.
Yeah.
Um, it like these are circumstances that you generally have zero control over, right?
Right.
You're just trying to either survive, like war survivors. It's very prominent.
Mm-hmm.
Why did I come home and all my friends didn't?
Mm-hmm.
Like we were talking before, off the air, I heard 9/11 was just like a horrible, horrible thing for survivor's guilt. The people who
Yeah.
made it out of the towers, had to wonder, why me? And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's the bigger thing. Why me? Why did I
And
do it?
also the people that were, no, all the firefighters and people that went into the wreckage to try to save people and didn't come out. And then the ones that did come out, there's got to be a horrendous amount of survivor's guilt.
Yeah, because you're wondering why the guy next to you, because a lot of these people were running in together and were doing the
Right.
exact same chore and then didn't make it. So I totally understand that. I've read on one a while ago about it was like 6 people in a car and they all died except for one. And then that person, like 5 years later, took their life because they couldn't deal with it. So, I can totally understand where the issue is with your mental state and how you're trying to, deal with the situation after all these things happen. Taking your life obviously is not the best way of taking care of that, because then the survivor's guilt around that and your family.
Yeah.
Like,
Where does
why?
it end?
Yeah. Why? Well, you're just continuing a cycle when it comes to that, because then that's the other thing that they talk about. Like, why couldn't I see what was wrong with them? Why couldn't I prevent it? Why didn't they talk to me? So I think there's lots of survivor's guilt when it comes to lots of different situations. Obviously, seeing a therapist is probably the best way of at least on the surface dealing with it. Talking to someone who can take those feelings in and mathematically put them in places to at least push you in the right direction.
I would hope. I don't know. We talk about psychologists a lot, and what I'm hearing is that these people don't have their head out of their ass to be able to counsel anyone, which is what's making life harder for people that really need it. Like, you got to find somebody that says something that hits a nerve with you, or hits, it's not just anybody. Like, it could be a friend, it could be a family member, somebody that you respect what they have to say, I guess would be a better way of looking at it. Because right now, I don't know, counselors just aren't meeting the mark. But I get what you mean. You need to have somebody that you could talk to that has some vision that could help get you through all the feelings that go with it, for sure.
Yeah, I think it has to do with, like, okay, at least, if you're talking to your friends might prompt you to go to see a therapist or vice versa and talk to people. The only way that your mind will stop doing it is if you can get to a level where you realize it wasn't me.
Yeah. It has to be a level of resolution for sure.
Yeah. But I think that, who knows how long that could take. Like you said, with your dad 50 years later, still has some kind of, why did I get to have this life and no one else did?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that there's a real answer to a time period. It could be some people can get past that fairly quickly. Even though they do have a survivor's guilt, I think that they find an anchor somewhere else to go, okay, I'm supposed to be doing this. This is why this happened.
Mm-hmm.
But it's finding that. And when it comes to therapists, I think that there's a big pool, right? So you have to find the right person to talk to. My friend down the street has seen therapists for different things over the time and would just complain miserably about ones and then found one that worked. So I think that is something where, like, you have to find the person who's going to not sugarcoat things, but not, obviously send you down a different road. So it's that a balance, right? Between, you got to be told no, but you got to be told no, right? You know what I mean? So, and, for your friend, I think that there is something about trying. We can't save everyone. And I think that is the bigger thing, right? You can only do so much. He tried and it didn't happen. And that does happen in life. I've seen it times where people who are medical professionals, right? Doctors who do these long surgeries, and then the patient dies on the table. And these are people who have massive knowledge about how to make sure people live, and even they can't do it. So in the end, I think that you have to step back for a second, look at yourself, and realize I did whatever I could during that time period and it didn't happen. You're not going to get rid of that guilt, but at least you're going to find a level of putting it on a shelf and doing your best not to go back to it.
I agree. I in living with my dad, and he's very upfront. He's like, I've been fucked up since the day I came back from Vietnam, and even before, because he was there, in Vietnam. He said fucked up. So those are his words, not mine. And he was given a Bronze Star, which is for heroic actions in crisis situations, if I understand that correctly. And he doesn't even know why he got it. He can't even get to that point where he could see the good that he did because of the survivor's guilt and everything that he has. He's like, I don't know why I'm still alive. I don't know why I didn't get blown up. I should have. I was close to it. I was shot at. I went through all these things. But why am I here? Like, what is my responsibility? He never got to that. He never figured it out, what his responsibility or his role is. And yet, if you look at his life, it's so dynamic in very subtle ways. Like, he didn't have to do much, but he's always been in the place where these moments have come where he's helped so many, and he's been so much to the family and to his friends and to outside people. In our culture, he's the chief of our tribe, and people come to him for counsel all the time. And he doesn't get it. Like, it still doesn't resonate with him that he does have a purpose. He still looks at, I don't get it. I don't know why I'm here. I shouldn't be here. It's crazy because we do have talks about it. I talk about things probably a lot that most people don't talk about with their parents, because I talk about everything. So, when I hear him and I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, where do you get this distorted reality from. But I think that that's part of survivor's guilt is you're guilty for things that you couldn't possibly change.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that's the case for my friend. I know that's the case for my dad. I don't know. I've never been put in a situation where I felt survivor's guilt, thankfully. But I've always been thankful to be alive. I didn't have the guilt though. If you do what you're supposed to do and you try as hard as you try, you have to be able to let yourself off the hook. And you can't take responsibility for something you couldn't control.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had a friend who overdosed, and I didn't have survivor's guilt at all. I did feel bad because of certain things, maybe not taking a phone call but I had to step back and realize that, I probably couldn't have changed the outcome,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because they didn't want the outcome to change.
Right.
So, I had a little guilt, but it wasn't like survivor's guilt, but it was more like I felt guilty for not taking a phone call here and there. But it was at a time where I was at a different part in life. I had a small child and I had responsibilities to myself,
Mm-hmm.
but I can understand why people go through it. It is rough because you just go, man, maybe if I would have just did this, they'd still be here.
Yeah.
Or if I would have just did this, they wouldn't have, left to go over here. And then this happened. So yeah, I think it's human nature to have survivor's guilt. But when you're put in a circumstance like your friend where you're going to watch someone lose their life when you tried, and
Mm-hmm.
there's only so much you can do. I hope that I never have to live with such a haunting thing.
Yeah.
Because it's one of those things where I can see the cold sweats at night. I can see the bad dreams. I can see waking up going, okay, I should have done better. Unfortunately, life likes to kick you in the nads, and it gives you the reality of life, right? It's fragile.
And that's what I would take away from that. Life is fragile and you have to be kind to each other. And you should definitely try to be graceful in the life that you lead and be a good person. But to feel guilt for something that you didn't do, I just wish that it was easier said than done to let that go, because the guilt is so it's not fair to have that guilt. It's not a rational thought, it's just feelings and emotions that are built up and you don't know what to do with them. So you push them back onto yourself as like
It's a coping mechanism.
is it a coping mechanism, or is it just a way you just, because you failed, you feel like you failed. So you just have to take that like you did something wrong, when in reality, my friend, my dad, they didn't do anything wrong. They did what they had to do. They did what good human beings would do. Neither of them wanted to be where they were at the time they were going through this either. They were just in the right place at the wrong time. And they dealt with what they had to deal with. And I think that's commendable, because a lot of people wouldn't do that. I kept saying to my friend, I'm like, how many people had their phones out and were recording this? You said in the deposition they had pictures of you and you didn't realize you had a bloody shirt. Like, who was taking the pictures that wasn't helping? Because if everybody was helping, maybe the girls would have gotten out alive.
Right. Well, and I
so
think that's a big problem today in general.
Yes. So I'm like, why do you feel guilty when you weren't taking the pictures? You were doing what you needed to do. So I don't think that the guilt is rational. But boy, is it debilitating.
Yes, that's it. You know, you're seeing it firsthand. You know
Yeah.
what it can do to your existence. I think that's the bigger thing, right? It's how we see, you know, what's going on as ourself, and then you're seeing it from the outside. I think
Yeah.
that could probably even be worse because you're seeing how it can break someone down so quickly.
Well, in my dad's case, like he can't even deal with conflict. Like he shuts down because he's afraid of his reaction if he reacts.
Right.
So who knows how he was when he was in Vietnam or what type of situation that he got in where he had to act in a way that scared him. You know, it makes me wonder because he doesn't talk about it so much. But it's really been hard to deal with a man that won't talk to you because he doesn't want to get any sort of rage in him out of what is it? Is it fear? Is it guilt? Like what really, this is 52 years later. You should be able to fight with somebody if they're being an asshole. Like, you know, what happened that is so bad that you're afraid of your own reaction? That's a scary thing because
Right.
I've only grown up with a father that's been like that. And because of that, there were times where I felt like he should have stuck up for me or he should have said something. But the fear of how bad he could be is what comes to his mind first, not let me take care of my daughter because she needs to be. And that's a deprogramming because you're supposed to want to protect your kids, right? But he said, one time I remember him telling me, I made you strong enough that you could take care of yourself because I didn't have what I needed to take care of you. And I thought that's a pretty heavy thing to
Fuck.
say as a father, that he couldn't do it, but he could make me strong enough to do it.
Right. That is
That's
heavy
crazy,
as shit.
isn't it?
Fuck yeah.
And I'm like,
That's heavy.
damn. But oftentimes I felt like I didn't have anybody to back me up because he couldn't.
Right.
So there's that too. Like it didn't boil over to me in a good way. You know, it made things worse because I had to protect myself. I had to take care of myself. And I had a dad sitting right there that wouldn't.
Right.
So
Yeah,
to me,
so
that was
the
kind of
repercussions of this is much bigger.
Yeah.
And it could be much bigger with your friend going
Right.
forward.
Right.
I looked up a website basically just on survivor guilt and Google. You gotta love Google. It brought up 6 tips for handling survivor's guilt. It's on Psychology Today. There'll be a link in the description of the show. Look, I think that you should always see a doctor. Let's start there before we get too deep into this.
A good doctor.
Yeah. But you know, take this with a grain of salt because we're not medical professionals. We have to say that. You know, just in case someone decides that what we're saying is correct. But this is here's some things. It says 6 things you should do to help yourself with surviving guilt. Ask who is truly responsible. This, I think, number 1 hits it out of the park. I think you do have to really look deep in who's responsible for it. This one kind of goes over a thing where a Syrian grad student thinks they're responsible for their country suffering. And I think this is kind of a good one where, you know, you're going through things mostly in a country where there's a lot of death from starving or war, right? Like this says, like it's the government and the warring factions that are truly responsible. You're a byproduct of that. And this is just a really kind of a good example of where you really don't have any way to say that to get out of it, right? You're a product of the environment. So it's really not your problem, your fault. And, it kind of goes over a couple other things of like surviving a natural disaster. Tornado rips through town. Right. They're like, and I've seen way back when I lived in Ventura County. What was that? Maybe 4 or 5 years ago. Remember the horrible fires we had here in California?
Yeah.
And I went to a street working on an alarm. There was one house left. One on a whole block. And I kind of stepped back for a second and was like, wow, like it must have been crazy to still live on that street with only one house. That the whole block was gone. And
Yeah.
I'm working on this home, right, that had an alarm issue because of things that had happened. Someone had to kick the door in during the fires and broke an alarm contact. So that's what I was there for. And I kind of stepped back, and in my time sitting there, I went, wow, it's got to be kind of weird. And I asked the owner, I was like, it must be kind of, odd living here now. And like, they were like, yeah, it's kind of weird that we're the only house. And so there was a guilt to that. Like, why did my house? Because I did ask about like people dying around them, and they're like, oh no, everyone got out. Everyone just lost their house. So there was kind of a guilt to that. And I could see it in him. Like, yeah, it's odd, but he did say on the flip side, they're going to rebuild, all these houses will be here in, 2 years. But
well, remember the 94 earthquake was the same thing. I had a lot of friends who were red tagged, not able to go into their place that they lived in for any of their things. And here we had our house still standing. There was total chaos inside, but we still had a roof over our heads, and we didn't have our homes blow up like several did going down the street. And, it was weird because when people say, are you still, one of the first things they had asked was, are you still where you were living before? And that was kind of a weird question that people were asking because so many people were out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember that. Thankfully, the same. My apartment building at the time was the only one on my block that didn't get red tagged.
Yeah.
So it was kind of an odd thing. So as you can see, it's not just death. Like, these are things that there is guilt in just having something that most people had beforehand, like someplace to live. Number 2 on this list says, remind yourself you can handle sadness and loss. As horrible as guilt is, it can be easier than dealing with the devastation brought on by grief. So in the case of your friend, look, you have to step back and realize that regardless, there's sadness and loss. And that his grief is going to be better or harder than the loss that happened, and I know it's kind of weird. Like, the thing with this too is that's going to continue to rehash this for him is if he ends up seeing the families of the people, right? He has to go to court and all these things. There is no moving on from it. So you have to at least realize that, you did what you could, and death happens, or whatever the thing happens.
One of the things that he was asked was do you have any contact with the family? Have you spoke to any of the family? And he said no. And they didn't believe him, and they asked him why. And he said, because I can't face their grief because I failed them. Mm-hmm. And I was like, what?
Yeah, that's gnarly.
Yeah. God, what a good person, honestly, that would feel that way to that degree, that he was worried or concerned for the people that these girls left behind. Like, what a kind soul and a good heart. But at the same time, I think, gosh, like maybe if he spoke to them Like maybe if he spoke to one of the mothers, one of the mothers could say something like, "Thank you for trying."
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for being there. Because I know as a mom, that's where I would be with things like, thank you for being there when I couldn't be, to try to save her when I was not there.
Right.
And I think that if he got some of that, maybe he wouldn't feel so much guilt, or maybe he still would. I don't know. But I just think, gosh, like there's no reason for the guilt.
Yeah. And I think with hearing something like that, I kind of agree with what you said earlier that, at least someone who gave a shit was there in the last moments of someone's life.
Yeah.
Because you look at like, the horrible years of our COVID disaster, how many people died in hospitals alone
Yeah.
because of this nonsense that I would probably have guilt for that if I couldn't,
Hmm.
could you imagine if you were a nurse during this whole nonsensical bullshit and you had to watch people or push people away? There's probably guilt in that. Like I could have let people in, but I was told not to. So I had to watch their family member die and they didn't
Yeah.
get to. So look, there's so many ways to do our best to kind of step back and go, okay, how do we handle this?
Right.
Um, Number 3 on this list is think about how people who love you feel about your survival. Um, I think that there is something to that where, ask people, because look, we've all been in situations, and I don't want to say all near death, but things, right, that, you know, have happened in our lives that you should step back and go, hey, I should feel pretty good about this. Your friends probably say the same thing. Like, we're happy you didn't get in that car accident, or
Yeah.
we're happy this didn't happen. You shouldn't feel guilty for not being able to save someone. Like, you also shouldn't feel guilty about, you know, making it to work tomorrow. Life is kind of its own little, it's a daily thing, right? We're all running from death, right? It's chasing us sooner or later. But you can't worry about, the thing of I couldn't do this or I couldn't do that. Because it's to me, it's a death sentence in your own head.
Hmm.
And it takes way more time for you to get there. Because we can only do so much. I since you like me have an older child, I remember when my son first got his driver's license, I was like puckered up all the time when he was leaving. Just like, okay, just make it home. Just make it home. Just make it
Yeah.
home. And I still feel that way. But I kind of had to step back and go, okay, I can only do so much. Right. I hope my kid makes it home every single day. But he is in the hands of everything that's happening, right? Life, him, driving, other people, speed. There's so many things that it would drive me, bonkers to worry at that level. We can only do so much.
Absolutely. And the end game is nobody gets out of this life without dying.
Mm-hmm.
It's I do believe that we are given a certain amount of time to do what we need to do, and once that's done, it's over. There's nothing we could do to fix any of that. It just is what it is. And you just have to love and support and do everything you can to live the best way you can with the people that mean something to you. And you got to let the rest go, because in time, we're all going to be there. We're all supposed to go. How we go, if we work it right, it doesn't need to be so tragic, and it doesn't need to take other people with them or with us. But yeah, I kind of feel like you can't have guilt for that.
Mm-hmm. Here's one, number 4. It says it's not a zero-sum game. It says hidden beneath survivor guilt is the idea that there's only so much luck to go around, and is benefiting from good fortune means that someone else is being deprived of it. But luck is random. And I think that that's a good one. It says the lottery is a perfect example of how arbitrary luck is. Sometimes no one has the winning lotto numbers, and sometimes multiple people share it. The chances of hitting it big aren't increased or decreased by someone else's picks. It's hard to accept that there are not greater order of things, but once we do, we feel vindicated. That's kind of a good way of looking at it.
Mm-hmm.
Luck is random. If you look at disasters, right? If the person who is in the town that has a hurricane hit, he just happened to go on a trip, he just happened to book a trip to Hawaii that week.
Right.
And half the town perished. That was just luck doing its thing. You just happened to be there. So I think you have to kind of step back and realize that, look, life is random. And the girls in that car, were, if they would have done something different, maybe things would have been different, but
maybe not.
Maybe not. Exactly.
Yeah.
And then you can go down the line of, things happen because they're supposed to.
Well, look at all the people like that have been, they were scheduled to go on a trip and something happened and they didn't go on a trip and then the plane goes down.
Yep.
And they're like, that's so crazy. It could have been me. Well, yeah, it could have been anybody.
Yeah, exactly.
It just happened to be when it was.
Mm-hmm.
And who was there suffered.
Let's see. Here's another one for you. Number 5 of ways to help with your survivor's guilt. Do something meaningful for someone else. Let's see. Feeling guilty drives us, make us right. We feel ways. So basically, it just says, look, maybe, to help yourself, just continually be good. Like, there's nothing wrong with helping somebody else out to maybe help with your thing. So basically, put something else on the scale to balance it out.
Yeah, be of service to something else.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Like it gives a good example, I guess, during the Civil War. People of the Confederate Army were asked to go help other people, to give them the guilt of, obviously being in a war, killing people not too far away from your own neighborhood. So this says that they were giving their own blood to people from the other side to try to help them out. So look, there is something to be said about that. Find maybe something else you can do to help out, to balance that scale of, I couldn't help them, but I can help these people.
Mm-hmm.
There's something to be said about that, I guess, where you can kind of step back and go, I'm at least giving back to society to where I couldn't help these people.
Yeah.
I don't know about how much that is going to help a lot of people, but I will tell you that it probably helps some, to the degree of going, I'm still giving back to society.
Well, yeah, if you live in a place of gratitude and do acts of service for other people, you can't live with all the negative. It takes a back seat, and what you push through and what you focus on will become what your mood is going to be like. Mm-hmm. So I think it's really important to do that, to be of service and to help out in maybe in ways where you can win and it's not so dire. It's all, it could be life or death. It doesn't have to be that big of an act.
Correct. Yes. Small things help.
Yeah.
Like volunteering at at the local church, the food drive, or to help feed people. These are small things that you can do to definitely at least show yourself that you're helping. And that,
And they do make huge differences too.
Mm-hmm.
They do.
And number 6 says, this goes without saying, but take care of yourself.
Yes.
If you've survived a harrowing experience or have otherwise been left behind, taking care of yourself both physically and emotionally is essential for healing. Eat well, sleep well, move your body, find support to help make sense of it all. Yeah, I think that those are massively big things that you have to step back and realize that you can't drown in your emotion.
Right. It says guilt has a place for our in our emotional repertoire. It motivates us to make amends, but with survivor's guilt, it's misplaced. So grieve your losses, but remember that it wasn't your fault. Others are glad you're still here and that you can use the survival to pay it forward. And I believe in that.
That sounds perfect without, going too deep.
Yeah.
I think that most of the things that they were talking about in the first 5 are very true. Find some help, do these things. And at the end, look, you have to be able to grieve the losses, but it wasn't your fault.
And also be thankful that it wasn't you or your children or your whomever, that you don't have to suffer that loss because it didn't happen to you.
Mm-hmm.
You could feel guilt that you weren't able to fix it, but it's also good to sit and say thank you that it wasn't me today, because it so easily could be you at any given time.
Mm-hmm. Correct. And I think that we as humans, it's built into us from a very, very long time ago, right? Could you imagine of being in a place, where you had to survive off killing food and there wasn't enough and they had to watch many, many, many people die around them?
I can imagine.
The survivor's guilt, in that time period must have been crazily bad.
Yeah.
But they didn't have the things around them to let the stress get to them, right? Because you had to get your next meal and you had to make sure you had a cave to sleep in or some kind of, um, house. So I think that there's probably less of the emotional burden over a long time period.
Yeah.
Because they didn't have that. You probably had survivor's guilt for a very hard time for a very short amount of time. Now, we don't worry about those things. We don't have to worry about generally where the next meal comes from, or, and I'm generalizing, obviously. And there's so many things that now can remind us of that very quickly. We have a phone in our hand that gives us all the shitty news very quickly.
Yep.
And I think, we've talked about social media a million times on the show. These are the things that continue the circle of these bad things, right? You're already guilty that something happened or you survived. And then you watch the news and there's another plane crash somewhere and, 3 people survived out of 200. And now that is another kicker that just reopens the wound and reopens the wound. So, going back to that last tip, get out, walk the beach, try to find positivity in the things that are around you without having to get punched in the face every 5 minutes from your phone telling you how shitty the world is.
Yeah. Yeah, because, there are shitty parts to this life that we lead, but there's also some really good ones, and we need to hold on to those more so than we hurt from the bad ones. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, what good are we here? And what good is life if we don't hold on to that?
Yeah, I think you're right. Step back, look at the things around you, and find all that positive ones. Like, this is great. This is great. This is great. even though there's bad, because there's always going to be bad, even at your highest level. I mean, you look at people that have taken their own lives that are actors or people who had immense fortunes,
Mm-hmm.
still found a way to not find the positivity.
Yeah.
So you need to step back for a second and go, okay, woke up this morning, my relationship's shitty. Okay. I'm going to fix it. I'm going to get out of it. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Money's tight. Okay. I'm going to tighten my belt. I'm going to not do this. I'm going to give up doing this until I can get above water. These are survival mechanisms that I think if you have guilt from the other thing, you have to find that mechanism to get you through it.
Mm-hmm.
Your friend, there is no way of me patting him on the back and going, you did your best, because only he knows if he did his best. And he knows that he had to watch someone perish, but he also has to understand that he did his best to try, because you're right. There were probably tons of people standing around with a phone in their fucking hand instead of helping. And maybe we as a society will have less survivor's guilt if we can have more people trying to help the other people survive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So see, I've told him 100 times, you could look at this situation so many different ways. But what is the truth? The truth is you were there and you were trying. And unfortunately, it was their day to go.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to roll with that.
You have to pump yourself up saying you did your best.
Absolutely. And I make sure to remind him every time, did you do everything you could? He said, yes, but it wasn't enough. I said, but it was all you could do.
Yep.
That's all anybody expects from you.
Yeah. And look, he'll find solace sometime. I hope it's soon. But he needs to know that he did the best he could. And that's what you need to live with. I did what I could.
Absolutely.
And hopefully we all at some point look at our lives and say that, right? We all did the best we could.
Yeah.
Because if we don't, we're all going to be in some kind of mess like that. I would say from the standpoint of beforehand, check in with your people, make sure they're doing all right. But you can't fix every problem. And I think that us as human beings, we love to try to fix every problem.
Yeah.
And we can't. There's none of that. Just be supportive. And
be supportive, be kind, and do what you can to help.
And
do what you can to help.
And talk to people.
Yeah.
If even, I know there's a lot of online therapy now, which is kind of interesting. But I mean, there's a whirlwind of people out there that will listen. Lean on them. I think it's big, because there's no reason for you to wallow in the guilt of something that truly you probably couldn't have fixed.
Yeah, it was out of your hands.
Yeah. Anything else to say this week there, Miss Tina?
Life is ever evolving. Be kind to yourself. Like, there's just so much even in my world that we don't talk about. There's so much going on. I'm always reminded that today is just one day in a huge journey that we have here on this earth. So just be kind. Take it easy on yourself.
Yeah. Look in the mirror and realize that you did your best today, and tomorrow's another one.
Yep. That's all you could do.
All right. Make sure you check us out on our social medias, Twitter and Facebook, Instagram. You check us out on YouTube Music, Apple, Spotify, all the places that you can listen to podcasts, and we're there. And it's an opinion show, so don't get it twisted. Keep coming back every Wednesday. Check us out. Until then, I'm Rob. That's Tina. We'll see you next Wednesday. See ya.
See ya.